Well, I think it's very evident that both Jewish physicians and non-physicians, Jewish people who were not physicians, played a major role in the development of the healthcare system in Denver and Colorado. They created the early hospitals, the early Denver General. They created institutions that drew people here, National Jewish being one, the Jewish Consumptive Relief Society being the other. These were pioneers in the truest sense, not only developing the medical systems, but really creating a society and a culture that allowed for the growth of Denver and Colorado in general and the Jewish population of this region. What they laid down as a foundation more than 100 years ago proved to be the important building blocks for Denver to become one of the major respiratory centers in the world and one of the major medical centers, certainly in this country. So if you look back to them, they were true pioneers. They had the foresight, the energy, the commitment, the dedication to build facilities, systems that are in existence today.
Colorado was still an untamed wilderness when the discovery of gold near Pikes Peak in 1858 brought the area to the nation's attention. By the spring of 1859, fortune seekers began to arrive in droves and used the rifle infant camps of Denver and Auraria as jumping-off points. Jews also took part in the quest. During the Big Excitement, as the year of the gold discovery was called, at least 12 Jews of German descent migrated to Colorado to join in the hunt for freedom, new opportunities, and wealth. The unpredictability of gold mining and a growing demand for supplies encouraged many of the Jewish 1859ers to establish small businesses in new towns and mining camps throughout Colorado. As the early pioneer men married, often importing their brides from back east, and as children were born, the fledgling towns of the West began to stabilize. The first Rosh Hashanah service in Denver was held in 1859. However, it wasn't until the 1870s that these pioneer Jewish men and women were finding more time to confront the task of building an organized Jewish community. As Colorado's population began to swell, the need for medical attention was felt, and it was the Jewish community that often stepped forward to take the lead. Indeed, Jewish physicians, hospitals, and pharmacists were frequently on the cutting edge in medical developments. They were to have a profound influence on the development of Colorado medicine, and the ripple effects extended throughout the United States as well. Austrian-born Dr. John Elsner led a wagon train into the burgeoning town of Denver in 1866 as an officer of the medical attachment of the U.S. Federal Army. Elsner was instrumental in establishing Denver's first hospital with 29 beds, what was later to become Denver General Hospital, and providing an invaluable service to his Jewish co-religionists as he traveled hundreds of miles throughout the region to perform the traditional Jewish ritual of circumcision, an event he carefully recorded in a small notebook. Elsner remained active in both the Jewish and medical communities his entire life, serving as one of the first B'nai B'rith presidents in 1874, an active member of the Congregation Emmanuel, and president of the Colorado branch of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. from which the BMH congregation rabbi, Charles Kavar, had graduated. Elsner was also a founder of both the Denver Medical Association and the Colorado Medical Society.
There were a number of pioneer physicians who came to Denver and Colorado, some of them practicing in the mining camps, but the one name that really is in the forefront with regard to being a pioneer Jewish physician and a leader in the medical community in Denver and Colorado is John Elsner. He and his wife were both very culturally oriented people. Their home was on Curtis Street, and it was a center for cultural activity, sort of the equivalent of a Parisian salon. Anyone who was anybody in cultural life coming through Denver, opera stars, actors, writers, even the great Oscar Wilde on his way to give talks in Leadville would stop and visit the Elsners in their home. There would be guests invited as well. Elsner had the largest private library in the state. He had a large collection of minerals. He was an amateur geologist, and fossils, which became the core of the State Historic Society's collection. The Elsners had rare porcelains and art in their home. It was indeed a cultural center.
In addition to a busy private practice, Dr. Elsner served as both the city and county physician, as well as a founder of Denver's Gross College of Medicine. As county physician, in 1870, Elsner rented a modest building to serve as the county hospital.
I collected many patients, some of whom were lying in the hen houses and barns, and there was always the opportunity for many gunshot wounds to be treated. Dr. John Elsner.
Elsner served as one of the incorporators of National Jewish Hospital and served on its first medical advisory board, along with other prominent early Colorado Jewish physicians, Dr. Saling Simon, Dr. Robert Levy, Dr. M. Kleiner, and Dr. S. R. Feel. Dr. Elsner was typical of the many Jewish physicians who followed, using their skills to better not only the Jewish community, but the general community as well. Dr. Samuel Cole served as another early colleague of Dr. Elsner's, arriving in Denver in 1872 from New York City, where he had opened a clinic for the treatment of eye and ear diseases. Cole was a founder of Congregation Emmanuel in 1874 and served as president of the local B'nai B'rith Lodge in the same year, succeeding John Elsner. Born in Germany in 1845, Dr. H. David Heinberger grew up in New York City, graduated from Bellevue Medical School, and moved to Colorado in 1868. He served as Dr. Elsner's early medical partner until 1873, when Heinberger was elected for a short term as the county physician. Heinberger was also a charter member of the First Medical Society in Colorado, as well as one of B'nai B'rith's earliest members. Apparently possessing a restless spirit, before long he moved to Saguache, Colorado, where he served as the first mayor and president of the town when it was incorporated in 1874. Heinberger also owned the Saguache Chronicle for a time and hosted General Ulysses S. Grant on a hunting and fishing trip at his ranch. Dr. Heinberger finally settled in Leadville, where he served as president of Temple Israel and practiced medicine until his death in 1911. Leadville boasted 4 other early Colorado Jewish physicians: Dr. Max Ballin, who shared a medical practice with Dr. Heinberger, and brothers Dr. Maurice Kahn, a surgeon, and Dr. Lee Kahn, an ophthalmologist, who published articles on tuberculosis and eye disease. For a time, Maurice shared an office on Harrison Street in Leadville with his first cousin, Dr. Solomon Kahn, who became one of the founders of Leadville's St. Luke's Hospital. In 19th century Europe and America, tuberculosis, or consumption as it was commonly called, held the dubious distinction of being the leading cause of death. Colorado, with its dry, sunny climate, proved to be a magnet for these tuberculosis victims, and by 1896, the state was being flatteringly referred to as the world's sanatorium. In the 1890s, Denver had a population of about 100,000 with over 400 physicians, a higher per capita rate than the average around the United States. It is not surprising that a large percentage of Colorado's early physicians migrated to the state because of tuberculosis, and that Jewish physicians and the Jewish community in particular would become pioneers in the national treatment of the White Plague. Since neither state nor municipal hospitals were available to care for the hundreds and then thousands of TB patients that poured into Denver, it was up to religious and ethnic institutions to provide assistance. The Jewish community was the first to step forward with aid by opening the National Jewish Hospital for Consumptives in 1899 and the Jewish Consumptives Relief Society, or JCRS, in 1904. Colorado was the only state in America to boast 2 Jewish sanatoria. Indeed, with the formation of these 2 national Jewish centers for the treatment of tuberculosis victims, the history of the Denver Jewish community took a unique turn and accelerated the growth of Denver's Jewish population in the first decades of the 20th century. Lay people worked hand in hand with physicians to initiate both institutions. Frances Weisbar Jacobs, Denver's Mother of Charities, Rabbi William Friedman of Congregation Emmanuel, and prominent Denver Jewish businessman Louis Onfanger served as the major figures behind the founding of NJH. While on the west side, a group of 20 immigrant Jews, many of whom were themselves the victims of tuberculosis, collected $1.10 between them to launch the JCRS. Both the NJH and the JCRS were founded as non-sectarian institutions and treated all patients free of charge. Together, they treated over 50,000 patients from throughout the United States, with the most up-to-date, innovative medicine available during the era, and developed both national and international reputations.
Health and medical issues played a pivotal role in the growth of Colorado's Jewish community at the turn of the century. By the 1880s, Colorado, with its dry and sunny climate, had earned an exaggerated reputation for performing medical miracles. While the Jewish population in the West stagnated or even declined from 1900 to 1940, in Colorado, the Jewish population rose from about 1,500 in 1897, before the opening of the National Jewish Hospital and the Jewish Consumptives Relief Society, to over 20,000 by 1937. Not only did many TB patients stay in Colorado after they were cured, so to speak, but many also brought their families and friends. The growth of Denver's Jewish population after 1900 was stimulated largely because of an influx of predominantly Eastern European Jews who joined other men and women of other religious and ethnic groups to chase the cure in the benevolent climate of Colorado.
By 1890, Dr. Elsner and his nephew, Dr. Robert Levy, also one of the NJH incorporators, were providing free medical attention for indigent Denver Jewish patients on behalf of the Hebrew Ladies Benevolent Society and to impoverished citizens from all ethnic and religious groups. Dr. Levy was born in Canada but had graduated from the University of Denver and from Bellevue Hospital Medical College in New York City. He returned to Denver in 1884 and remained in practice until retiring in 1945. His specialty was otolaryngology, and he acquired a national reputation based on his research on the effect of tuberculosis on the throat and nose. Levy served as the president of both the Colorado and Denver Medical Societies and as the co-founder of the Denver Clinical and Pathology Society. During his long years in practice, Levy treated many famous Americans, including President William Howard Taft. Dr. Moses Collins served as the first medical superintendent of the National Jewish Hospital from 1900 until 1917, and he worked closely with patients to educate them about the dangers of the disease to help prevent the spread of tuberculosis. His successor, Sailing Simon, was born in New York City in 1870 and had graduated from City College in 1889 with classmate Bernard Baruch, who remained a lifetime friend. After graduating, Sailing developed tuberculosis, and he and his family traveled to Colorado in search of a cure. Simon went on to receive a medical degree from Denver's Gross College of Medicine and stayed on to treat other TB victims. The year Simon became a physician, doctors commonly made house calls, and the cost for a visit at the time was between $2 and $5. Active in the Jewish community, he was a member of Temple Emmanuel, president of B'nai B'rith in 1896, and later a founding member of Green Gables Jewish Country Club in 1929. Dr. Simon, who served as the medical director of National Jewish Hospital from 1917 until 1919, instituted the research department and served as a trustee of the hospital for over 50 years. In Trinidad, Dr. Alfred Freudenthal, son of Temple Aaron's early rabbi, Leopold Freudenthal, spent his entire medical career in that city. Born in 1879, he graduated from the Gross Medical College in Denver. Alfred, along with his father and his brother, Samuel, a Colorado attorney, established the Freudenthal Foundation, which, after their deaths, provided ongoing funds for Temple Aaron and a number of local charitable organizations, including the Freudenthal Health Center. Contemporary estimates revealed that as many as 1/3 of Colorado's physicians at the turn of the century migrated to the state due to tuberculosis. The percentage was probably higher among Jewish physicians, many who stayed to practice at the Jewish sanatoria. The JCRS also produced some of Denver's most well-known early physicians, including Dr. Charles Spivak, Dr. Philip Hilkowitz, and Dr. Adolf Zederbaum, each of whom moved to Colorado because of a respiratory disease among family members. Spivak's wife, Jenny, probably had incipient tuberculosis, which he alluded to in this letter to a friend. Hilkowitz's father, Rabbi Elias Hilkowitz, the acknowledged dean of Denver's Orthodox rabbis, moved to Denver because of his severe asthma. And Dr. Zederbaum, a Russian immigrant, was himself a victim of TB. Dr. Adolf Zederbaum served as the JCRS treasurer and the first chairman of the JCRS Medical Advisory Board. He immigrated to America from Russia in 1884 and arrived in Denver in 1905. It was funds donated by Dr. Zederbaum in memory of his father that paid for the first tent cottage erected on the JCRS grounds. He died in 1920 of TB after 16 years on the JCRS board. Dr. Philip Hilkowitz, who served as the president of the JCRS from its opening in 1904 until his death in 1948, was born in Russia but immigrated to America as a child. He graduated from the Ohio Medical College in 1897 and then opened his practice in Denver to join his parents and siblings. In addition to his voluntary duties at JCRS, Hilkowitz served as a professor of pathology at the Denver Gross Medical College and held the positions of both state and city chemist. An early ardent Zionist, Hilkowitz helped found Denver's first Zionist organization and was a well-known intellectual, being fluent in 14 languages. He was often seen riding his bicycle with a book propped up on the handlebars. Hilkowitz was the vice president of Denver's Dante Literary Society and served as a captain in the Army Medical Corps during World War I. Hilkowitz's close associate, Dr. Charles Spivak, had also immigrated from Russia in the 1880s, but in his case to escape the Russian police for his revolutionary activities. He received his degree from Jefferson Medical College in Philadelphia in 1890, and 5 years later was chief of staff of the Philadelphia Polyclinics in gastrointestinal diseases, his specialty. In Denver, Spivak served as an associate professor in the Department of Medicine and as a professor of anatomy at the University of Denver. In addition, he was a professor of clinical medicine at the Denver Gross Medical College, served as secretary of the Denver and Arapahoe Medical Society, and president of the Colorado Medical Library Association. A prolific and talented writer, he authored numerous medical and popular articles. His love for the Yiddish language and his special affinity for Jewish culture brought him into close contact with Abraham Kahan, longtime editor of the Jewish Daily Forward, the preeminent Yiddish newspaper of the day. In his later years, Spivak became a frequent contributor to the Forward, penning articles in the 1920s on health, with such intriguing titles as Practical Advice in the Talmud for Prolonging Human Life, and don't crawl into a clean bed with dirty feet. Soon after his arrival in Denver, Charles Spivak became involved with Denver's West Side immigrant Eastern European community. National Jewish Hospital had been founded primarily by German Reform Jews, although in the early years, the vast majority of patients were Eastern European Jewish immigrants. Spivak helped establish the JCRS, which was to provide an alternative to NJH for destitute consumptives seeking a more Jewish environment, as well as pioneering a medical effort to assist patients with more severe cases that were not admitted elsewhere. Spivak served as executive secretary or administrator of the JCRS from its opening in 1904 until his death in 1927, and was often referred to as the sanatorium's guiding genius.
There was never any question of anything that Papa wanted, that all he had to do was say he wanted it, and somehow out of the earth or out of the sky, it would be there so that he could have what he wanted for the patients. He was a miracle man, that's all I can say as far as my father was concerned.
Dr. Spivak insisted the JCRS be a people's institution, with money being collected in dimes and quarters. He was known affectionately as Papa Spivak because of the involvement and personal advice he demonstrated towards all his patients.
My dear friend, I have made careful inquiries as to your physical condition at the time when you left the sanatorium, and find to my regret that your lungs, although in a fair condition, yet cannot be considered as cured, and that it would not be safe for you to marry. Marriage will retard your recovery. Yours sincerely, Dr. Charles Spivak.
Dr. Oskar Sherry, born in Russia in 1872, served as a prominent pioneer chest surgeon and succeeded Zederbaum as the chairman of the JCRS Medical Advisory Board. He arrived in Denver in 1894 and entered night school, where he quickly learned the English language. The study of medicine fascinated him, and he graduated from Gross Medical College in 1902, and later became a noted researcher and attending surgeon at the Denver City and County Hospital. Active in Denver's Jewish community, he was involved with Temple Emmanuel, BMH Synagogue, and the Denver Sheltering Home for Jewish Children, where he served as the attending surgeon. Sherry was representative of an era when physicians' involvement with patients went far beyond mere business. As a personal friend of leading Denver attorney Philip Hornbein, Sherry was even mentioned in the newspaper when he operated on Hornbein's gallbladder. Dr. Isidore Bronfman served both as medical director at JCRS from 1922 to 1927 and later at National Jewish Hospital, where he served from 1928 until his untimely death in 1934 at the age of 47 due to tuberculosis. Born in Russia in 1886, Bronfman came to the United States in 1902 and received his medical degree with honors from the Long Island Medical College in 1911. Originally a surgeon and superintendent at Beth Israel Hospital in Boston, his work in the field of pulmonary tuberculosis, particularly in the area of pneumothorax surgery and heliotherapy, helped make the JCRS and NJH national pioneers in medical research. Dr. Bronfman was also an assistant professor of medicine at the University of Colorado, a director of the Central Jewish Aid Society, and a member of Denver's B'nai B'rith and Congregation Emmanuel. Other institutions grew out of the two tuberculosis hospitals. In 1907, Fanny Lorber and Bessie Willens led a group of Jewish women in founding the Denver Sheltering Home for Jewish Children, which catered to children whose families had been devastated by tuberculosis. As the years passed, the sheltering home evolved into the Jewish National Home for Asthmatic Children, and eventually became the renowned Children's Asthma Research Center, NAC, before it merged with National Jewish in 1978. A Moshev Zakanim Society was formed on the West Side in 1919 to provide a home for the elderly. Bella Mintz was elected vice president. and Ed Grimes, one of the original Cotopaxi colony pioneers, who once walked 150 miles to Denver, became president. Mrs. Mintz was able to persuade local philanthropist Isidore Rudy, known as the Little Tailor, to donate 14 lots at the corner of Lowell and 16th Street. By 1920, guided by Dr. Haskell Cohen, the organization's goal was amended to include a hospital, and thus the name was changed to Beth Israel Hospital and Home Society. But it always retained its commitment to providing a Jewish environment and kosher kitchen for its patients. Prominent Jewish philanthropist Leopold H. Goldman, owner of the Golden Eagle department store, donated $50,000 to open a 50-bed facility. In the 1940s, a new brick building enabled Beth Israel to provide up-to-date care for both hospital patients and the elderly, along with an in-house synagogue. Dr. Emanuel Friedman was one of the early beloved Jewish physicians who opened his office on West Colfax in the immigrant community, and probably the first of Denver's Jewish pediatricians. Born in Hungary in 1881, Dr. Friedman immigrated to America at the age of 10. While in medical school in Louisville, Kentucky, he contracted tuberculosis and was sent to National Jewish Hospital to recuperate. He completed his medical studies at Denver's Gross Medical College in 1904, then opened a general practice. He also served as an early physician at both National Jewish Hospital and the JCRS. In 1918, Dr. Friedman began specializing in pediatrics after postgraduate work at Harvard and Columbia.
My grandfather, Dr. Emanuel Friedman, had a very personal vision of medicine and never lost that throughout his entire life. Lived to 79 and was still making house calls the night before he passed away in November of 1960.
And my grandfather was the pediatrician to most of the Jewish community in the early days, and included my husband. So that when we were engaged, I ran to his office to quickly check up on him, to read the reviews. Fortunately, they were pretty good.
Dr. Friedman served twice as the president of Children's Hospital, and in 1954 he was presented with the Rose Hospital Medal of Honor as an outstanding local physician and humanitarian. Dr. Arthur Esserman also became one of Denver's pioneer pediatricians, beginning his practice in the early 1920s as a partner of Dr. Friedman's, and initiating one of Denver's first residential medical buildings. He too became a member of the staff of Children's Hospital, and at his untimely death in 1952, was honored by Children's Hospital for his contributions. Although Jewish women were rare in the medical field in early Denver, some became popular midwives. Miriam, or Mary Kobe, whose family first settled in Central City, became known as the Angel of Mercy in Denver's Eastern European community because of her selfless kindness and skill as a midwife. She was officially registered in the Denver City Medical Records, and although she used no instruments, she appears to have been greatly respected by local physicians. The story is told that Denver's famous Dr. Buchtel once introduced her at a convention of obstetricians as
the most famous midwife in Denver. She rarely loses a baby or mother, and is smart enough to know just when to call upon a medical man.
Her granddaughter later recalled that Mrs. Kobe often looked like the Pied Piper with her own grandchildren and the children she had delivered, following her around the streets of West Colfax. As medicine became more professionalized, women often turned to physicians rather than midwives. Mary Kobe's granddaughter Florence, who also studied midwifery, later married Dr. Morris Crone, a well-known West Colfax physician, who was said to have delivered over 2,500 babies, often assisted by his wife. Another popular West Side physician was Dr. Abraham Blumberg, who started his medical practice in the tiny ranching town of Siebert. Dr. Blumberg was extremely popular with the Gentile residents and was soon nominated as coroner for Kit Carson County. As observant Jews, the Blumberg family received weekly shipments of kosher food by train from Denver. And when the children grew older, the family relocated to Denver so that they could be part of a Jewish community, and Dr. Blumberg opened a practice in West Colfax.
Many of the Jews who came to Colorado came for health reasons, particularly because of tuberculosis. So there were Jews who were interested in helping their fellow Jews. In addition to that, when there was so much discrimination, particularly in corporations and academia, discrimination against Jews, the opportunity to be in a profession afforded one of the basic ways for upward mobility for Jewish people.
It appears that the first Jewish woman physician to practice in Colorado was Dr. Louise Rabinovitz. Born in Russia in 1869, she received her medical degree from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania in 1899. In 1905, Rabinovitz gained a reputation for her experiments with resuscitation of victims of electrocution and was known for pioneering research in electroanesthesia and cardiac physiology. While in New York City, Rabinovitz owned this house in Upper Manhattan, just west of Fifth Avenue. Dr. Rabinovitz received her Colorado medical license in 1923 and practiced in Denver for a number of years before her death in 1954. Colorado Jewish physicians were major contributors to medical literature, and among the most prolific were Doctors Spivak, Elsner, Zaderbaum, Sherry, and Duboff. 45 early Colorado physicians contributed a total of 350 articles between 1871 and 1921. As time went by, Colorado Jews continued to be centrally involved in medicine, including a number of pharmacies founded by Jewish pharmacists. Azriel Stein, whose artist wife Irene Miller Stein, part of the pioneer Miller family, founded Penn-Cole Drugs at the corner of Pennsylvania and Colfax. In addition to dispensing medicine, Penn-Cole's soda fountain became a Denver landmark. In the 1930s, at least 6 Jewish-owned pharmacies graced West Colfax Avenue. Lou Tobin opened his first drugstore at West Colfax and Newton in 1936, before moving to Quitman in 1948. Tobin supplied medications to both the Denver Sheltering Home and Beth Israel Hospital for many years. It was not uncommon for Lou to come into the pharmacy in the middle of the night to fill an emergency prescription. And Tobin's was also known for its famous 25-cent soda fountain menu. By the early 1940s, it was realized that there was a critical need for additional hospital beds in Denver. While some favored enlarging the existing Beth Israel Hospital, others pushed for a new modern Jewish hospital on Denver's east side. For some time, the controversy kept the project from moving forward. Then in 1944, Dr. Saul Bassow was able to harness unified support for a new hospital, and the Jewish Physicians Committee was born. The 9 wise men, as they were affectionately named, included Dr. Eugene Auer, Dr. Saul Bassow, Dr. Bernard Scherbach, Dr. Emanuel Friedman, Dr. Ray Gottesfeld, Dr. Maurice Katzman, Dr. Herman Laff, Dr. Eli Nelson, and Dr. Abe Raven. The committee met every Sunday morning beginning in 1945, and with the help of Denver Jewish leaders such as Maurice Schwader, I. Hilb, and George Ruler, Rose Hospital opened in 1949. Named after World War II Jewish military hero General Maurice Rose, General Dwight D. Eisenhower helped lay the cornerstone for his deceased fellow soldier. Colorado's early Jewish physicians drew on Jewish traditions of hesed, acts of kindness, and communal responsibility, as well as American civic virtues, to establish thriving medical practices in the state. Although many of the early Jewish doctors were of German descent, before long the sons and later the daughters of Eastern European immigrants made a name for themselves in the medical profession as well. For both groups, the field of medicine provided not only an opportunity to serve the public good and the portable means of making a living, It was also a means of upward mobility and Americanization. Today, hundreds of Jewish physicians practice in Colorado, and the medical facilities that were founded by members of the Jewish community continue to have a major impact in medical discovery and care.